YouTube, what's going on? In today's video, I'll be going over the best overland testing stations to farm early on so you can get some of the strongest builds online and start clearing your level 40 dungeons while crushing the end game. Before we get started, if you haven't checked out my specialization or build videos covering where to spend your specialization XP, they're definitely worth watching. They go hand in hand with where to farm the loot I'm about to cover. Let's start by going through the labs I think you should prioritize first if you want to get the best loot for your hybrid builds that are currently dominating the game. First on the list is the Old Quarry. This was introduced in the last patch 1.4. The Old Quarry offers a wide selection of weapons, most notably the Leech's Maw dual blades, which are currently the best in slot melee weapon for clearing this dungeon itself if you're just starting out. The dungeon also drops two of the strongest melee augments in the game, Blade Sharpener and Heavy Metal Blade Coating. On top of that, the Combat Exoskeleton is an incredible piece of equipment, giving us a 10% melee damage increase simply by wearing it. While there isn't much armor worth farming in here outside of the exoskeleton, the lab also drops excellent shotgun augments like the Heavy Caliber and Scattergun Rampage mod, which we'll talk about more when we get to the Fire Lab. Overall, the Old Quarry is an absolute S tier starting dungeon for farming weapon and augments if you're running a melee build. You can honestly stay here for quite a while if your goal is just to get some melee augments and run a two augment melee weapon. Next up is Testing Station 136, better known as the Fire Lab. The Fire Lab is another heavy hitter when it comes to loot. I would definitely rank it S tier as far as the progression goes. It offers one of the largest collections of S tier weapons you can farm in a single location. It has a high chance to drop weapons like the Perforator, Shellburster, Replica Pulse Sword, and Spike Hilt Sword, just to name a few. We're also going to want several augments from here, including the Blade Sharpener, Blade Warding Weave, Dartproof Latticing, and Flame Resistant Fabric. All these are fantastic additions for both melee weapons and building specialized armor sets for the other testing stations. Testing Station 136 is also home to the current best armor set in the game, which is the Bulwark armor set. Bulwark is fantastic for tackling some of the tougher labs on this list, especially Testing Station 152, since it allows us to tank the boss much more comfortably if we're running a range setup with the extra damage mitigation we have from it. Speaking of Testing Station 152, also known as the Lightning Lab, this is the third dungeon I would prioritize farming. The Lightning Lab has one weapon in particular that a lot of players chase if you aren't using a shotgun or melee build, and that's the Regis Triple Shot Rifle. This weapon is excellent for both PvE and PvP content, which is why it's so popular. Outside of the triple shot, there aren't really many weapon draws over here. You can also get the Ancient Way and the Lightning Gun, but after the recent nerfs, it's not really worth farming for the Lightning Gun or wasting your time on that just because there's better options on this list. So the other major drop is the Heavy Blade Adjuster augment for melee weapons. This is one of the only areas that actually drops this augment, so you definitely want to farm this to get a third augment slot for your melee weapon if you've gotten the two other ones from the Old Quarry. Uh, a grade 5 of perfect rolls across all three augments. You're looking at a 210% additional melee damage. You have a melee setup once you get maxed out. It's really going to add a sizable amount of damage to your melee weapon. This lab also has a high chance to drop the Heavy Caliber and Blade Sharpener if you haven't already picked them up from the Old Quarry or Fire Lab. Lastly, if you're planning on farming higher level labs like Fire or Poison, you'll want the Forge Armor set, which also drops here. Forge Armor is one of the strongest armor sets in the game because it greatly reduces the annoying fire damage from the Fireball slab that we encounter, while also helping mitigate the poison damage over time effects you'll encounter in testing stations such as 195. Once you got a solid kit together, it's time to move on to the Radiation Lab. Radiation drops the coveted pincushion armor, which is fantastic for PvP and also works well in hybrid builds whenever your shield goes down, especially in places like the Old Quarry. Radiation also has several great weapon and armor augments, including Blade Sharpener, Heavy Caliber, and Scattergun augments like the GRDA Amplifier and Capacitor. The standout armor augment here is Penetrative Reinforcement. This augment also drops from the Poison Lab and has roughly a 4% drop rate. So pretty low, but it's definitely worth the farm because you want to ultimately stack up double dart mitigation armor like the Bulwark for tanking the Lightning Lab or for PvP. You'll eventually need to either farm Radiation or Poison to get the mod. So If you aren't trying to do radiation that much, definitely switch over to poison, which we're going to cover shortly. I wouldn't recommend staying in radiation very long unless you're trying to farm that mod or some of the shotgun mods. All the other labs that we've covered so far have more to offer. The weapons are a little bit underwhelming in radiation unless you're trying to get PvP weapons. So I wouldn't spend more than, a third, less than a fifth of your time doing this kind of lab. But moving on, let's talk more about the other lab on the list, and that is Testing Station 195, otherwise known as the Poison Lab. The Poison Lab has several unique augments that you can't get anywhere else. Most importantly, it drops the Jabal Spit Dart Expander and Spit Dart Amplifier. When combined with heavy caliber, these complete a fully triple augmented Regis triple shot rifle, turning it into one of the strongest range weapons currently in the game. If you enjoy using the triple shot, this should be your next farming destination after the Lightning Lab. The armor drops here are fairly underwhelming, so I wouldn't recommend farming poison if your goal is to simply upgrade your armor. However, you can pick up some excellent weapons here, including the Regis Disruptor Pistol and the Seath. Combined with the loot you've already collected from the previous labs, both of these weapons perform extremely well, especially the Seath in PvE. Last and certainly least on our list right now is the Darkness Lab. Darkness, unfortunately, just does not have a lot of good loot right now. After the Lightning Gun nerf, the only thing notable there is the higher chance to get the Replica Pulse Sword. Executor's Armor is the armor set that drops from this lab. It's another heavy armor set, like similar to the Bulwark Armor, but it's honestly outclassed by the Bulwark Armor right now. Executors has a higher concussive damage resistance, but since there's no bosses or hard content in the game that require that resistance, it really doesn't serve much of a purpose, at least on the PvE side. And as far as mods go for this lab, the only thing that's notable that drops are the Karpov 38 mods, or the other mods that we can get from the Fire Lab and other dungeons that we covered earlier. But the Karpov 38 mods are underwhelming, considering the weapon itself is outclassed by a lot of the other guns in the game currently. So I would just pass up on going to this lab for now, guys, until things change in the meta. All right, folks, to wrap everything up, if you're primarily focused on PvE, I recommend prioritizing the first three labs on the list, and that is the Fire Lab, the Lightning Lab, and the Old Quarry. You can repeatedly farm these three locations and acquire roughly 90% of everything you'll want for the end game. Mix in some poison lab runs afterwards, and you'll be in an excellent spot. If you're more PvP focused, I'd spend additional time farming both poison and radiation alongside the other top three labs. And if you're just looking for something different, give darkness a try, but I wouldn't invest too much time there unless you're someone who enjoys the lab itself. That's all for today's video. I'd love to hear what your favorite labs are to run. Do you agree with my progression order, or would you rank them differently? Let me know down in the comments, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.